The rain fell hard on the windows of the small diner that night. Inside, a man in a worn janitor's uniform stared at his hands that had worked 18 hours straight. His name was Marcus, and in just a few minutes, one small act of kindness would change his life in ways he could never imagine. But before the miracle came the struggle. Before the $100,000 check appeared in his pocket like a gift from heaven itself, Marcus had to survive a night that would test everything he believed about the world. He didn't notice the elderly couple at first. He was too tired, too hungry, too worried about the pile of bills sitting on his kitchen table at home. Marcus worked as a night janitor at Riverside Medical Center, the big hospital on the east side of town. It wasn't a glamorous job. Nobody looked at him twice when he pushed his mop down the hallways. Nobody said thank you when he scrubbed the toilets clean at 3 a.m. But Marcus didn't do this job for thank yous. He did it for one reason only: his daughter, Emma. Emma was 8 years old. She had her mother's eyes, big brown, full of wonder, and every single day Marcus looked into those eyes and made the same silent promise he had made the day her mother died. I will give you a better life. I will never let you down. Tonight was supposed to be simple. He had clocked out early because the hospital was slow. He decided to stop at Rosie's Diner, a small place on the corner of 5th and Main, to get a cup of coffee before heading home. Maybe a sandwich if his wallet allowed it. When he pushed open the door, the little bell above it chimed. The warmth hit him first, then the smell of bacon and fresh coffee. His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten since breakfast. A piece of toast he had given half of to Emma because she was still hungry. He slid into a booth near the window and looked at the menu. His eyes went straight to the prices. $4.99 for a grilled cheese, $2.50 for coffee, $8.99 for the special, meatloaf with mashed potatoes. He had $14 in his pocket. That was all the money he had until Friday. He decided on just coffee, maybe some toast. He couldn't afford more. And then he heard it. A soft voice, trembling, full of sadness. "I'm sorry, dear. I thought I had more. I'm so sorry." Marcus turned his head. 2 booths away sat an elderly couple. The woman was small, with silver hair pinned neatly behind her ears. She wore a faded blue coat that looked like it had seen many winters. The man beside her was thin, his face lined with deep wrinkles, his hands shaking slightly as he held hers. On their table sat 2 plates of food, barely touched, and standing over them was the waitress, a young woman named Clara, holding the check. Clara looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, the total is $27.43. You only have $11 here." The elderly woman's eyes filled with tears. "I could have sworn I had more in my purse this morning. Harold, did we?" The old man shook his head slowly, confused. "I don't know, Margaret. I don't know." Marcus watched as Margaret dug through her purse again, her hands trembling. She pulled out tissues, a small comb, reading glasses. But no more money. Her face crumpled with embarrassment. "We haven't eaten in 2 days," she whispered. We just wanted one warm meal." Something broke inside Marcus at that moment. He didn't think about his own empty stomach. He didn't think about the bills waiting at home. He didn't think about the fact that if he spent this money, he wouldn't be able to buy Emma her favorite cereal this week. He only thought about one thing. What would Emma want me to do? And he knew the answer. Marcus stood up from his booth. His knees ached. His back was sore from mopping floors all day. But he walked over to Clara and spoke in a calm, quiet voice. "I'll pay for their meal." Clara blinked. "Sir?" "Their meal," Marcus said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out the crumpled bills, all $14 of them. "I'll cover it. And if it's not enough, put the rest on my tab. I come here sometimes. Rosie knows me." Clara hesitated, but then she nodded. She took his money and walked away. The elderly couple stared at Marcus in disbelief. Margaret's lips trembled. "Young man, you don't have to—" "Please," Marcus said gently, sliding into the booth across from them. Eat your food. It's getting cold. Harold looked at him with watery eyes. Why? You don't even know us. Marcus smiled, a tired smile, but a real one. I know what it's like to be hungry. I know what it's like to not have enough. And I know that if my daughter was watching me right now, she'd want me to help you. So please, eat. Enjoy it. He didn't stay long. He asked Clara to bring him a glass of water instead of coffee, and he sat with the couple for a few minutes while they ate. They talked. Margaret told him that they had been married for 54 years. Harold told him that he used to work as a carpenter, building houses for young families. They had a son once, Margaret said quietly, but he passed away many years ago. They didn't have much family left. Life has been hard lately, Margaret admitted, but meeting you tonight, it reminds me that there is still good in this world. Marcus didn't know what to say to that. He just nodded and wished them well. When he stood up to leave, Margaret reached out and touched his hand. "What is your name, young man?" "Marcus," he said. "Marcus Thompson." She smiled at him, a smile so warm, so kind, that it reminded him of his own grandmother. "God bless you, Marcus Thompson. God bless you and your daughter." He walked out of the diner into the cold rain. The bus ride home took 45 minutes. Marcus sat in the back, staring out the window at the city lights blurring past. He thought about the elderly couple. He thought about how Margaret had cried over 20 cents. He thought about how Harold's hands had shaken when he held his wife's. He thought about how close he was to being in their situation. The bills at home were piling up. The rent was due in 3 days. Emma needed new shoes. Her current ones had a hole in the toe. The heating bill last month had been higher than expected, and now he had given away his last $14 to strangers, but somehow Marcus didn't feel regret. He felt peace. Maybe that was foolish. Maybe he was naive. But in that moment on that cold bus, Marcus believed that doing the right thing mattered, even when it cost you something. When he got home, the apartment was quiet. His neighbor, Mrs. Chen, was sitting on the couch watching TV. She babysat Emma on the nights Marcus worked late. "She's asleep," Mrs. Chen whispered. "She asked about you 3 times before she finally closed her eyes." Marcus thanked her and pressed a few dollars into her hand, money he had hidden in a jar for emergencies. Mrs. Chen tried to refuse, but Marcus insisted. She had helped him more times than he could count. After she left, Marcus walked to Emma's room and opened the door slowly. There she was, curled up under her blanket, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. She looked so peaceful, so innocent. She had no idea how hard her father worked just to keep a roof over her head. He knelt beside her bed and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I'll never let you down," he whispered. "I promise." He didn't notice the check until the next morning. Marcus was getting ready for his shift when he reached into his jacket pocket to grab his gloves. His fingers touched something that shouldn't be there, a folded piece of paper. He frowned and pulled it out. It was a check. His heart stopped. The amount written on it was $100,000. $100,000. Marcus stared at the numbers. He blinked. He rubbed his eyes. He looked again. The check was real. It was made out to him, Marcus Thompson, and signed at the bottom in elegant handwriting, and in the memo line it said, "For your kindness, may this bless your family as you blessed ours." His hand started shaking. How? When? And then he remembered. Margaret had touched his hand as he left the diner. She had reached out to him, held his fingers for just a moment. That must have been when she slipped the check into his pocket without him noticing. But that didn't make sense. Margaret and Harold looked like they had nothing. They couldn't even pay for their own meal. How could they possibly write a check for $100,000? Unless they weren't who they appeared to be. Marcus didn't go to work that day. He couldn't. He sat at his kitchen table, the check in front of him, trying to understand what had happened. Emma walked in, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, why are you sitting in the dark?" Marcus quickly put the check in his pocket. just thinking, sweetheart. Come here." She climbed onto his lap and leaned against his chest. "Are you okay, Daddy?" I'm fine, baby. I just had a very strange night." "Did something bad happen?" He thought about it. "No," he said slowly. "Something good happened. Something really, really good." Later that afternoon, Marcus went back to Rosie's diner. He needed answers. Clara was working the lunch shift. When she saw him walk in, her face lit up. "Hey, you're the guy from last night, the one who paid for that old couple's meal." "Yeah," Marcus said, "that's me. Listen, I need to ask you something. That couple, do you know anything about them? Have you seen them before?" Clara shook her head. "Never seen them before last night. They just came in, ordered food, and then realized they didn't have enough money. I felt so bad for them." "Did they say anything after I left? Did they mention where they were going?" "No, they just waited until they finished eating and then left. The old lady asked for your name, though. She wrote it down on a napkin." Marcus's heart pounded. "She wrote down my name?" "Yeah. And then they walked out. Real slow, like they weren't in a hurry. I figured they were just going home." Marcus thanked her and left. He didn't know what to do next. He had a check for $100,000 and no idea who had given it to him or why. The next few days were chaos. Marcus went to the bank, half expecting them to laugh at him or tell him the check was fake. But the teller examined it carefully, made a few phone calls, and then looked up at him with wide eyes. "Sir, this check is legitimate. It's drawn on an account at First National Trust. The funds are there." Marcus felt dizzy. "So, it's real? I can actually cash this?" "Yes, sir. Would you like to deposit it into your account?" He nodded, unable to speak. When he walked out of the bank, he had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. $100,000 in his account. Enough to pay off all his debts. Enough to move Emma to a better school. Enough to finally stop worrying about every single dollar. But he still didn't understand. Who were Margaret and Harold? And why had they chosen him? The answer came 3 weeks later. Marcus had used some of the money to pay his rent, buy Emma new clothes, and fix the broken heater in their apartment. He hadn't told anyone about the check except Mrs. Chen, and even she didn't fully believe him until he showed her the bank receipt. But he couldn't stop thinking about the elderly couple. He felt like he owed them something, a thank you, an explanation, anything. He started asking around. He went back to the diner every night for a week, hoping they would return. He asked the other staff if they had seen them. He even asked people in the neighborhood if they recognized the description. Nothing. And then one day, a letter arrived in his mailbox. It was addressed to him in beautiful handwriting, the same handwriting from the check. Inside was a single page. Marcus's hand shook as he read it. "Dear Marcus, by now you must have many questions. We want you to know the truth. My name is Margaret Eleanor Whitmore. My husband is Harold. For 54 years we have walked through this life together, through joy and sorrow, through wealth and struggle. What you saw that night at the diner was not what it seemed. We were not poor or hungry. We were searching. You see, Marcus, many years ago, we lost our only son, David. He was a kind man, a good man, much like you. He worked hard and loved deeply. He had a daughter whom he adored. But life was not easy for him. He struggled with money, with loneliness, with the weight of the world on his shoulders. One night David sat in a diner just like Rosie's, exhausted and broken. He had nothing left to give, and no one stopped to help him. No one offered a kind word or a gentle hand. That night our son made a decision from which there was no return. We lost him, and we have carried that grief ever since. After David passed, Harold and I made a promise to each other. We promised that we would spend the rest of our lives looking for people like our son, good people, struggling people, kind people who needed someone to believe in them. We have done this for 20 years. We traveled from city to city, diner to diner, wearing simple clothes and carrying little money. waiting to see who will help when we pretend to be in need. Most people look away. Most people pretend not to see. Most people are too busy with their own lives to care about two strangers. But not you, Marcus. You saw us. You heard us. And without hesitation, you gave us everything you had. That is why we chose you. The $100,000 is not a loan or a reward. It is a gift. Harold and I have been blessed with more wealth than we could ever spend in our lifetimes. Our family business was sold many years ago for more money than we ever dreamed of. But what is money without purpose? What is wealth without meaning? You gave us something that night, Marcus. You gave us hope. You showed us that the kindness we saw in our David still exists in this world, and for that we are eternally grateful. Please use this money to build a beautiful life for yourself and your daughter. She is lucky to have a father like you, and if one day, when you are older, you meet a stranger in need, remember us, remember this moment, and pass the kindness forward. With all our love, Margaret and Harold Whitmore. Marcus sat down slowly, the letter trembling in his hands. Tears streamed down his face. All this time he had thought he was helping them, but in reality they had been watching him, testing him, searching for someone worthy of their son's memory. And they had chosen him, a poor janitor, a single father, a man who had nothing, but still gave everything. That evening, Marcus sat Emma down at the kitchen table. He didn't know how to explain what had happened, but he tried. "Emma, do you remember when Daddy told you to always be kind to others, even when it's hard?" She nodded, her big brown eyes fixed on him. "Well, Daddy did something kind a few weeks ago, and because of that, some very special people helped us. They gave us a gift, a big gift, so that our lives can be a little easier." Emma tilted her head. "What kind of gift?" "The kind that means Daddy doesn't have to work so many nights anymore. The kind that means you can have new shoes and a warm coat. The kind that means we're going to be okay." Emma's face brightened. "Really?" Marcus pulled her into his arms and held her tight. "Really, sweetheart, we're going to be okay." The months that followed changed everything. Marcus paid off all his debts. He moved Emma to a better school in a safer neighborhood. He took classes at night to become a certified medical technician, a career he had dreamed of but never had time for. He still worked at the hospital, but now as a technician, not a janitor. The doctors and nurses who once walked past him without a word now stopped to say hello, to ask about Emma, to treat him like a colleague. But the biggest change was inside Marcus himself. He no longer felt invisible. He no longer felt worthless. For years, he had believed that his life didn't matter, that he was just another struggling man in a world that didn't care. But Margaret and Harold had shown him the truth. His kindness mattered. His compassion mattered. His small acts of love rippled out into the world in ways he could never have imagined. 1 year after receiving the check, Marcus did something he had been planning for months. He founded a small charity called Emma's Table. The mission was simple: provide free meals to elderly people who couldn't afford to feed themselves. Every week, volunteers would visit senior centers, shelters, and low-income apartments, delivering hot food and warm conversation. The first meal was served on the anniversary of the night Marcus met Margaret and Harold. He stood in the community kitchen watching as volunteers carried plates to elderly men and women, many of whom reminded him of the couple in the diner. Some were alone, some were scared, some hadn't had a real conversation in weeks. But tonight they were seen, they were heard, they were fed. Mrs. Chen stood beside Marcus, tears in her eyes. "You did this," she said. "You made this happen." Marcus shook his head. "No. They did this. I'm just passing it forward." Years passed. Emma grew up. She went to college, then medical school. She wanted to become a doctor, to help people like her father had always done. Marcus was so proud of her that his heart felt like it might burst. On the day Emma graduated, Marcus sat in the audience, watching his little girl, now a woman, walk across the stage to receive her diploma. The sun was shining. The crowd was cheering. And Marcus thought about all the moments that had led to this one. He thought about the cold rain on the night he met Margaret and Harold. He thought about the $14 he had given away without hesitation. He thought about the check that appeared in his pocket like a miracle. He thought about the letter that changed his understanding of everything. And he thought about David Whitmore, a young man he never met, a soul who struggled and fell before anyone could catch him. In a way, Marcus had spent the last decade honoring David's memory, proving that kindness could save lives, that compassion could change the world. After the ceremony, Emma ran to her father and threw her arms around him. "I did it, Dad, I really did it." Marcus held her close, breathing in the moment. "You did, sweetheart, you did." She pulled back and looked at him, her eyes shining. "I couldn't have done this without you. You sacrificed everything for me. You worked so hard. You never gave up," Marcus smiled. "Do you remember what I always told you?" Emma nodded. "Always be kind, even when it's hard." "That's right. And do you know why?" "Because you never know how one act of kindness can change someone's life?" Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. "Exactly. One act. That's all it takes. One moment of compassion, one hand reaching out, one heart choosing love over fear." Emma hugged him again. "I'll never forget, Dad. I promise." Margaret and Harold passed away within a year of each other, many years after that fateful night. Marcus received word from their estate lawyer. They had left him a final letter, along with instructions for their memorial service. He flew across the country to attend, bringing Emma with him. The service was small. There were not many people left who remembered the Whitmores. But those who came spoke of their generosity, their kindness, their unshakable belief in the goodness of others. After the service, the lawyer handed Marcus an envelope. "They wanted you to have this," he said. "They told me it was the most important thing they would ever write." Marcus opened it slowly. Inside was a photograph and a short note. The photograph showed a young man, David Whitmore, smiling at the camera, holding a little girl on his lap. The girl looked about Emma's age. David's eyes were kind, tired, but full of love. The note read, "Dear Marcus, this is our David and his daughter, Lily. She was only 4 when we lost him. She is now grown, with children of her own. We never told Lily about the money we gave you, but we told her your story. We told her about the stranger in the diner who gave away his last dollar to help 2 old strangers. We told her that the goodness her father carried lives on in the world. She cried when she heard it. She said her father would have done the same thing. Marcus, you didn't just help us that night. You helped our entire family heal. You showed us that David's spirit, his kindness, his compassion, his love, did not die with him. It lives on in people like you. Thank you for giving us that gift." Until we meet again, Margaret and Harold Marcus stood outside the funeral home, the photograph in his hand, tears streaming down his face. Emma stood beside him, holding his arm. "Dad," she said softly, "are you okay?" He looked at her, his beautiful daughter, now a doctor, now a healer, now a woman who had inherited his heart. He thought about David Whitmore, another father who had loved his daughter with everything he had. He thought about how different their stories could have been, how one moment of kindness, one person noticing, one hand reaching out, could have changed everything. "I'm okay," Marcus said finally. "I'm just grateful." "For what?" He looked up at the sky, where the clouds were parting to let the sunlight through. "For everything. For the chance to be here. For you. For every single moment that led to this." He paused. "And for 2 strangers in a diner who taught me that even the smallest act of love can echo through generations." The lesson Marcus carried with him for the rest of his life was simple. You never know who is watching. You never know whose life you might touch with a single word, a single gesture, a single dollar bill pressed into a stranger's hand. The world is full of people who are struggling in silence, fighting battles no one can see. And sometimes all it takes to save them is for someone to notice, for someone to care, for someone to say, "Let me help you." Marcus Thompson was once a poor janitor with nothing but $14 to his name, but on a cold, rainy night he made a choice. He chose kindness over comfort. He chose compassion over self-preservation. He chose to believe that helping others, even at great personal cost, was the right thing to do. And because of that choice, his life was transformed, not by luck, not by chance, but by love. Many years later, when Emma was an established doctor with her own practice, she started a tradition. Every Thanksgiving she would take her children to a local diner, a small, humble place like Rosie's, and they would pay for someone else's meal. She never told the recipients who she was or why she was doing it. She just paid the check, smiled, and walked away. Her children asked her once why she did this. Emma told them the story of their grandfather, the poor janitor who gave his last dollar to strangers, the check that appeared in his pocket, the elderly couple who spent their lives searching for kindness. "Your grandfather taught me," Emma said with them, "that money comes and goes, but kindness lasts forever. He taught me that the smallest act of love can change someone's life, sometimes in ways you'll never even know. And he taught me that we're all connected, even to strangers, even to people we'll never meet again." Her children listened with wide eyes. "So, every year," Emma continued, "we come here to remember, to honor your great-grandfather's memory, and to pass the kindness forward." The youngest child looked up at her mother. "But what if the person we help doesn't need it?" Emma smiled. "Then maybe it reminds them to help someone else who does." And somewhere, in a heaven beyond our understanding, Margaret and Harold looked down and smiled. Their son was not forgotten. Their love was not lost. And their kindness, planted like a seed in the heart of a struggling janitor, had bloomed into a forest of compassion that would grow for generations to come. Because that is the power of kindness. It does not die with us. It lives on forever. Marcus Thompson passed away peacefully at the age of 87, surrounded by his daughter, his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren. His last words were simple: "Be kind, always, no matter what." Emma held his hand as he took his final breath, and even through her tears she smiled, because she knew the truth. Her father's kindness had rippled out into the world like a stone dropped into still water. It had touched Margaret and Harold. It had touched Lily Whitmore and her children. It had touched every elderly person who received a warm meal from Emma's table. It had touched every stranger whose check was paid by someone who learned from his example. And now it would touch her, and her children, and their children, and on forever. That is the miracle of love. It multiplies. It never runs out. It always finds its way home. So the next time you see someone in need, a stranger in a diner, an elderly couple counting their change, a single parent struggling to make ends meet, remember this story. Remember Marcus Thompson, the poor janitor who gave away his last dollar. Remember Margaret and Harold Whitmore, who spent their lives searching for kindness. Remember that the world is full of hidden angels and secret tests. And remember that you have the power to change someone's life. All it takes is one act, one moment, one choice. So choose kindness. Choose love. Choose to be the miracle someone is praying for. Because you never know. That stranger you help today might just change your life tomorrow. And the ripples of your kindness will echo through eternity. This story is inspired by the countless everyday heroes who choose compassion over convenience, love over fear, and kindness over cruelty. May their light continue to shine in a world that so desperately needs it.